Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. And thank you for joining us, people on Zoom. I just wanted to give you, the people on Zoom, a reminder to please mute your microphones. We will have a question and answer session at the end. So for those of you on Zoom, you can participate that way at the end. So please hold on to your questions till we get to the end. For those of you in the room, there are 2 microphones. If you do have a question, we're just going to ask you to stand up and go to the mic so that we can visually see that there's a question and so that you will be able to be heard on the Zoom call. Speaking to the microphones is required for that. So thank you for putting up with all of those announcements. And now Dr. Bob Hess is going to introduce our speaker.
Thanks, Sunil. That was really cool how he jumped down. I can't do that anymore. So I'm really impressed, these youth. So Thomas Hull is considered an expert on origami mathematics as well as an accomplished paper folder, as some of us noticed just a little while ago. He has written origami instruction books, numerous origami math research papers, and authored Project Origami, a book on incorporating mathematics of paper folding into college-level math classes. He received his PhD in graph theory from the University of Rhode Island, and his research papers on origami math were helpful in generating interest in the subjects during the 1990s. He has been invited to speak on origami math to audiences all over the USA, as well as Japan, Puerto Rico, and Europe. His most popular origami creations are Fizz Unit, which has infected the fingers of procrastinators worldwide, and the 5 intersecting tetrahedra model, which was voted by the British Origami Society as one of the top 10 origami models of all time. On a personal note, I've known Tom for over 30 years. 33 summers ago, we participated in a research experience for undergraduates at the University of Colorado Boulder. I still remember us on a road trip, stopping at a gas station, and Tom pulling out his origami wallet to pay. Little did I know that this hobby that Tom clearly was skilled in would become his scholarly work. So let's give Tom a big welcome to St. John's.
I still have. And I still use an origami wallet just to, Anyway, we're not going to learn how to do that. Thank you so much for the invitation. It is my pleasure to talk about origami and math and science and not scissors or glue. The purpose of this talk is to kind of give you an idea of what this is all about. I've been doing origami since I was 8 years old, and I don't know why I liked it when I was that young. I don't know, there was something about just doing something with your own hands and nothing more than a piece of paper and coming and ending up with something that was remarkable or pretty or whatever. And at around the same age, I really liked math. I don't really know why. Maybe it was because it was so concrete and you could figure out what the answer always was. But then I didn't start thinking that maybe these things were the same thing until much later. And like when I was in college or grad school, that's when I really started being like, I've loved origami my whole life. I've loved math my whole life. What if I could do them at the same time? And I kind of got lucky in terms of getting into this because I've been doing origami and math since the 1990s. But more recently, as you'll see with some of the examples I give in this talk about how origami intersects with science and applications, it's in the past 13 years or 15 years, it's really picked up steam and gotten a lot of attention by not just math people, but like physics and engineering people and computer scientists and architects as well. Those of you who were here for the folding session earlier probably don't need this introduction of what is origami, but we gotta define our terms, at least with pictures. Paper folding is origami. The word origami literally means, ori means fold. I don't know Japanese, but I know this. Ori means fold, and gami is kind of related to the word kami, which is paper. So it literally means fold paper. And one thing that's important in origami is if you fold something like this crane here, and then unfold it, you get what's called the crease pattern. And these are the crease lines that are used to fold that model. And there's a lot of math in that as we will see. Also, a basic dichotomy of crease lines is they're either mountains or valleys. mountains come up out at you, they're like convex, and valleys are going down away from you, they're concave. And of course, if you flip the paper over, all the mountains turn to valleys, all the valleys turn to mountains, so there's that. But there's interesting relationships that you can see between them that we will just explore a little bit. Okay, but now, traditional origami looks like things like this. Both of these models, on the left is the classic Japanese frog, on the right is the classic Japanese crane. No one knows how old these are. I think people have found evidence of pictures of the classic Japanese crane that go back to the 1500s in Japan, but no one really knows how further back that goes. Same thing with the frog, roughly around then. There's some of the oldest origami models that are considered like iconic that survive today, but nowadays there's other origami models. If I can get my computer to show us what they are, there we go. Like this. This is Robert Lang's Black Forest cuckoo clock that he invented in 1987. It's one piece of paper. It's actually folded from a long rectangle, not a square. No cuts. If you pull on the pendulum at the bottom, the cuckoo pops out. It does not tell the correct time, though, except for twice a day. But he's working on that, I think. Yeah, so that's the cuckoo clock. These are Kawasaki roses. Toshikazu Kawasaki is a Japanese math professor who also has made amazing models. What I find surprising about this is that each of these roses was made from one square piece of paper, and there are no curved creases. Every crease is a straight line, but when you put it all together, it looks like it's curved, right? I don't know. To me, those are incredibly realistic. They're really fun to fold. What else do we got? Oh, Jungmaekawa's demon. Some of you were like, I showed this to some people earlier in the other room. This is, again, one piece of paper, no cuts, 5 fingers on each hand, as well as a tongue, eyes, ears, nose, mouth, tail in the back, and wings. Next to it is the crease pattern. Yeah. Now, here's what's cool. If I go back a couple slides to this classic crane or flapping bird, as it's called, notice what that crease pattern looks like. You see like certain angles, certain diamond shapes. You also see that motif, those same angles and shapes, in here. Like right up here. You see that same pattern. So there's a lot of repeating patterns that happen in origami, at least in some levels. This was 1985. This is more recent, 2001, Satoshi Kamiya's wasp. I don't know how well you can see this. Again, one piece of paper. But look at these close-ups I tried to include. I don't know if you can tell, but the wasp's feet have toes. I mean, wasps don't have toes. They have like things, but they're there. And it's not just a wasp body, it's a wasp's plated body like a real wasp is. Yeah, and there's the crease pattern. Okay, let me go back. If you wanted to fold Jungmaekawa's demon, you could probably Google and find instructions. In fact, they're in this book, Viva Origami. That's from 1985. If you wanted to fold Satoshi Kamiya's wasp, there's the instructions right there. That crease pattern appeared on the web in 2001, and that was it. And that's it. If you want to fold this, you just go. Okay? At some level, people stop diagramming their models. They're just like, here's the crease pattern. And you can figure it out. It's actually possible, but it's hard. It's a different level of complexity. Yeah, there's a lot going on in that crease pattern. There's other types of origami. There's a certain style of origami called origami tessellations. This is one that a guy named Sujo Fujimoto, Japanese chemistry teacher, actually, who was really into this style of origami, popularized it a lot in the 70s. Here, origami tessellations are where your crease pattern is some tiling of the plane, like a bathroom floor tiling or something, but it's got to also fold into something. And so when you fold it, you get another tiling. There's a lot of interesting math in this type of thing. Do I have another example? Yeah. What's cool about these is that when you fold them, they look interesting, but if you fold them out of thin, like really thin paper, this is a type of wax paper called glassine that's really thin, then the layers of paper will cast a different light if you hold the paper up to a window or something like that. That's what you're seeing here. It's almost a stained glass effect, but what you're seeing is the different layers of paper in the tessellation as it folds. It's still no cuts, one piece of paper folding into this flat thing that looks really, well, fun. Notice, okay, I invented these two. And this was when I was in grad school and I should have been writing my dissertation. Instead, I was folding these things. Okay, but let us explore something. So you all should have gotten a piece of paper. If you're on Zoom, you want to get a piece of paper. And you also want a pen or something. I'm going to do this too. Because what I want you to do is draw a dot in the center of your paper. So I have a Sharpie here. I'm going to do this. So I'm just going to draw a dot in the middle of my paper. I'm going to make it really big so people can see my dot. But we're going to do a bit of exploration here. Okay, so, okay, everybody got a piece of paper and a dot in the middle? There's the camera, yeah. All right, so here's what I want you to do. I want you to make a fold. Everyone's going to do something different, okay? No, this is experimentation time. The paper is going to be our mathematical laboratory. I want you to make some random fold all the way across your paper, but it's got to go through the dot. So just fold your paper with one straight crease as long as it goes through the dot. And just do it at random. A straight crease line. If you need to use a flat surface, do it. But it's got to go through the dot. Okay? And now leave that fold. Don't unfold it. Just leave it like that. And now make another crease that goes through the dot. So again, fold. It can be at any angle you want. I'm going to make mine a kind of a shallow angle like this. But again, fold it flat. But now we've just made a couple of creases through the dot. You could, if you want, stop there. If you don't want, do it again. Make another crease that has to go through the dot. So all these are going through the same dot. I'm going to do another one. There. Okay. If you're feeling really adventurous, you all have smaller paper than me, so it may be hard for you to do it another time. But at some point, you have to stop. But I'm leaving it up to you how many times you want to fold through your dot. Okay? So I think I'll stop here. No, what the hell? I'll do one more. I got a big piece of paper. I should do another one. Okay? All right. But when you decide you're done, make your creases sharp. Okay? So try to run them over with your fingernails or whatever you need to do. Okay? Because then what I want you to do is carefully unfold the whole thing and look at the creases that are coming out of your dot. I want you to count how many creases you have coming out of your dot and how many of them are mountains and how many of them are valleys. So you can think of each crease as being like a ray whose end point is in the dot and it's coming out. So you'll have a bunch, each one you're going to count separately. How many are mountains? How many are valleys? I want to do this. And I'm going to go to here. And I want people to tell me how many mountains, how many valleys. Yeah. Someone just shout it out, yeah? 4 and 4? I don't know if I believe you. Are you sure? You got 4 valleys and 4 mountains? 5 and 3. I actually like that better. Oh, wait. 5 valleys and 3 mountains? Okay. Yours is 3. Okay. Or it could be 5 and 3, right? You could turn your paper over and you'd have 5 and 3. So I'll accept that too. 7 and 5. 7 mountains? And 5 valleys? Anyone else? 5 and 9. 5 mountains. Wait, 5 and 9? I don't think that's right. 5 and 3? We already have 5 and 3. 8 and 6? You got a lot of folds if you got that. Yeah? Any? 5 and 7? Okay. Did anyone stop after only 2 folds? Everyone, no one wanted to do that, I guess. Yeah. I didn't count mine. How many do I have? I have a lot of creases here. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 6 mountains and 1, 2, 3, 4 valleys. I have 6 mountains and 4 valleys. 2 and 4. Someone had 2 and 4. That's a different. Any other different sets of numbers? 3 and 1. 3 and 1. That must have been only 2 folds. Count again. Sorry. I'm being choosy with my data because. So what pattern are you seeing here? The difference is always 2. Yeah. And that's kind of surprising if you think about it. Like, why should that be true? So let me go back to my slides, and let's think about this. Go do this, and go back to full screen. And yeah, and I can hide this. Okay. So yeah, how many mountains, how many valleys? Well, what we discovered is something called Maekawa's theorem. Maekawa is Jung Maekawa. He's the person who invented that origami devil dude. He's also a physicist and an artist, and he's not the only person who discovered this, but he got his name attached to it, and he's a cool guy, so I'm happy with that. But yeah, so phrasing this mathematically, we would say, what did we just do? We made a single vertex and an origami crease pattern that actually folds flat. That's kind of important. When we did this, we folded, and we ended up with something that was flat. Like you could press it in a book without crumpling it. It's called flat origami. And a lot of origami you see in origami books is actually flat origami. Because it's kind of easy, I don't know. Yeah, so then we let M and V be the number of mountain and valley creases coming out of that vertex, you know? And then the claim is that if you subtract M and V, you get plus or minus 2. And you can think of that as like flipping the paper over. Like if you got plus 2, that means you had more mountains than valleys. If you just turn it over, they'll all switch, and you'll get minus 2. So how would we prove this? This is, if you were in one of my classes and I was like, saying, I don't want to teach calculus today, let's do some origami. I might be like, okay, everyone take a while and try to prove this. But it's actually difficult, because where do you even get started? You know, this is actually, I think, a really good opportunity for exploring mathematical modeling, but in a context you don't usually see. A lot of people, when they say, oh, let's model something with mathematics, they think, let's model the weather, or let's model infectious diseases, and you end up using a lot of differential equations, and if you haven't seen calculus before, you're like, what? This is a little bit, on one hand, easier. There's no calculus going on. You're just folding paper. You're folding it into something flat, so maybe there's some geometry going on or something, but how do you even get started? You know, I'm going to spill the beans, because I want to show you a proof, right? But because the proof of this is rather nice. So here's one proof that I like of this. There's several ways to prove this, it turns out. So you can try to think of a different way if you want. But imagine you have your origami, okay, and you've just done this. You folded it a bunch of times, all creases meeting out of the vertex, and you cut the vertex off, like I'm trying to illustrate here. And then what I want you to do is consider the cross-section of your folded thing. That's what I'm trying to illustrate here. It's going to be some polygon, but it's flat. It's like your cross-section is like, and here I just have 4 creases to make it look more simple, but you'll get some, if you have 4 creases, you'll have some 4-sided flat polygon there, okay? And what can we do with that polygon? Well, we're going to do a proof technique called proof by monorail, okay? So that's a monorail. It's not a purple finger with teal nail polish. It's a monorail. It's a little car driving along a track, coming back to where it started, okay? And this is a flat polygon, not some weird stick figure that has angles. This is a cartoon, okay? So imagine that thing is flat, and this is going along the rim of my cross-section, all right? My question for you is, what's going to happen to the monorail whenever it, say, hits a corner of my cross-section? Because if it hits a corner, then it's hitting a crease. So it's going in some direction. It's going to hit that corner. It's going to keep going, so it's going to like turn 180 degrees and then go in the opposite direction. Because remember, this is flat, so it'll go along here, and then it'll hit the next crease and turn 180, and then hit another crease, turn 180. But every time, so we have to decide which creases were mountains and which were valleys. That depends if you're looking at your polygon from above or from below, okay? But if you're looking at it from above, then yeah, these ones on the edges here, they'd be like mountain creases, and say that, let's suppose that's turning positive 180 degrees. And then we go to the bottom, we hit another mountain, we're turning positive 180. But then we hit that one in the middle, and that's a valley, because it's going in the opposite way of the mountains. So that's turning negative 180 degrees. So the monorail is turning one way for all the mountains and the other way for all the valleys as it zigzags back and forth along this cross section. Now, when it gets back to the start, how much would it have turned in total? 360, right? Because it's really just going around a circle. So what does that mean? That means that if I do 180, positive 180 for every mountain, and then negative 180 for every valley, in the end, I'll get 360. So do people believe that first equation? I mean, then just divide by 180 and you get a minus v is 2. Bam. Right? But then again, remember, that was me assuming I was looking at it from above so that those positive 180s were all mountains. If I looked at it from below, they would have been reversed. So that would have given us minus 2. So you could get that too just by flipping the paper over. Yeah. So proof by monorail. Yay. We just proved something. Now, I could really go nuts with this. I'm going to save a lot more math for the talk I'm going to give tomorrow. But just to summarize, one of the reasons why I've been able to kind of make my research career out of doing origami math is this slide right here. You just saw one way of modeling origami with math. And it was using nothing more than some simple geometry, like turning 180 degrees or turning 360 degrees, and counting things. That's an area of math called combinatorics. We're counting how many valleys, how many mountains. But it turns out there's many other ways you can model origami with math. You can use matrices. There's something called rigid folding. That's what I'm going to talk about tomorrow, rigid folding and something called self-folding that uses matrix algebra. That's like surprising. Like, why should matrices be used in origami? But they are. It's weird. Straight geometry or combinatorics, and we've seen a little bit of combinatorics, but graph theory also turns out to be a big player in origami. There's something called statistical mechanics. I don't know if you've ever heard about that, but that's where these physicists kind of started looking at these things called polymer membranes. They come from like crumpling really tiny things like blood cell walls and stuff. And that stuff's really confusing. And it's really kind of new too. But it uses a lot of probability, it turns out. And origami is like a way to actually do that. It's really freaky. But you can also use analysis, differential geometry, and topology to study origami. I've been stunned with the variety of math that you can use to model this. It's a really rich thing. It's way more complicated than it deserves to be. Well, I shouldn't say that because origami is awesome. But yeah, it surprises me to no end. But what I really want to kind of spend most or the rest of my talk talking about is what's origami good for? Why are people excited about origami? This picture is a really good example. And this is from, I think, the year 2000. This is a while ago. So this is a shot of the International Space Station. Somewhere, I don't know if they do this very often, but the International Space Station has these big solar panel arrays. And every once in a while, they want to collapse them. So they use origami. They're folded up with these parallel pleats that go mountain, valley, mountain, valley. And when they got brought up into outer space, probably using a space shuttle at the time, and they were all folded up so they would fit in the cargo bay. And then they attached them to whatever piece of the International Space Station they had at the time. And then they would have these rods, like you're seeing the ends of them, these rods that would expand and unfurl the thing, the solar panel. So you end up with this long rectangle. And they have I don't know, a dozen of these things like this up there. And they provide power to the International Space Station. But every once in a while, they want to do some repairs or something, and so they need to collapse them up again. And I think the first time they did this was in the year 2000, and this happened. Do you see what's going on here? They unfurled them so they were straight, and then they were trying to just collapse them up again, and oops, they buckled. They got these buckling things. So that's like the origami failing. It's not folding the way it should because physics. Damn physics. So from what I understand, the astronauts actually had to go out and do a spacewalk and pop the creases back in place. So they were doing origami in outer space, in spacesuits. But and I thought this was kind of ridiculous. But I know some people who work for NASA, and they were like, "Don't worry about this, Tom. the astronauts up there love opportunities to go for a spacewalk. They're like looking for excuses. So they were kind of like, yay, we get to do origami in outer space. But still, you know, it is kind of, the funny thing is that there is a better way they could have done it. There is this thing, in fact, in the 1970s, okay, a Japanese astrophysicist named Koryo Miura came up with a better origami fold, specifically because he was like, how do we put huge solar panels into outer space? What would be a good way to do that? You need to fold it up or collapse it into some small package so you could stick it on a satellite, shoot it off into outer space, and then unfold it. And you'd like to be able to, for it to fold and unfold easily so it won't catch on itself or, you know, or so that you can't collapse it. So this is the crease pattern he came up with. It's just this, it's an origami tessellation of parallelograms. And it has a carefully constructed sequence of mountains and valleys. And let me show you what it looks like. I have a couple of them here. This is one just to kind of show you. It's parallelograms, and it actually folds and unfolds really, really easily. It's very fluid. It doesn't catch on itself at all. Even if you try, it won't. And you can get really big with it. This is a bigger one that I made. This one's kind of old, so hopefully it won't rip or something like that. But you just grab two opposite corners and open it up, and for such a small package, it really gets pretty big. And so I think there are some Japanese satellites that use these up there, but NASA should have spent, they probably would have had to pay Koryo Miura some money probably, because he probably copyrighted it, but, or patented it. But yeah, so here's an animation of the Miura Ori folding and unfolding, especially for the people over Zoom who maybe didn't see my physical model so much. But yeah, so this is actually, so Koryo Miura came up with this in the 1970s, and this is now probably the most heavily studied origami model by physicists and engineers. There's like, I don't know, probably over 100 papers written about this now. And they're not all written by me. I've only written one or two. But people have really gotten into this. And I want to, and an important part here is the math, okay? Because like, in order for Koryo Miura to convince engineers and physicists that this model is a good idea, he had to prove that what you see in this picture, this computer animation, is real. Like, because think about this. I don't know. Usually audiences are pretty easily impressed when I show them this. They're like, oh, look, this is cool, yeah? But you should all be cynical. Like, you're mathematicians. You know you shouldn't always believe everything, right? This is paper, right? How do we know this would work if I made it out of solar panel arrays? Solar panel arrays are rigid. They're stiff, not floppy like paper, okay? Like, this is really floppy, okay? If this was made out of sheet metal with hinges, I wouldn't be able to do this, okay? But would I still be able to fold and unfold it smoothly if I made it out of something stiff with hinges as the creases, you know? And that's what Koryo Miura proved. He was like, no, this is a real rigid origami. I can make it out of rigid materials with hinges for creases, and it'll still open and close smoothly. And he was a physicist, so he did this from a physics perspective. I'm a mathematician, and so I made this animation not by using any physics, but by calculating very carefully in fact, let me slow this down. If I pause this and kind of like fold and unfold it, every step of the way, like if I say I want one of these creases to be like folded at a 90-degree angle, what are all the other creases going to have to be? Like, how do I find a formula for the other folding angles, the folding angles at each crease, given one of the folding angles? It should be a 1 degree of freedom system. In order to make this animation, I had to figure all that out. Because the computer doesn't know, like, well, what are you doing? You're just drawing some polygons in three-dimensional space. But in order for it to look like origami, in order for it not to rip, I had to like know what all those angles were. So there's math behind just making this animation. I wouldn't be able to make this if I didn't have all that math, which we do understand. So this is part of what I'm going to talk about in tomorrow's talk. But what have people done with this besides Koryo Miura? This is the webpage of a company called FoldCore GmbH. Okay, this is a German company. A friend of mine is one of the CEOs or founders of this company. He's a really fun guy, a German guy named Yves Klett. And they are totally running with the mirror Ori idea in the following way. They're like, yeah, this is cool. Yeah, maybe you can make solar panels out of this, okay? But they want to do better. They want to, they're like, look, if I make, this is actually a better version. If I make one of these and I fold it just a little, I unfold it a little bit, so it's not completely flat. It's just opened up a little bit. Now, look what I've done. I've taken paper, which is a really pretty fragile material. You can rip it, you can crumple it, but now it's got strength. All of these corrugations are giving this a lot of strength. So they're like, can we make walls by taking a mirror Ori and putting panels above and below it, and now I have a thick wall that I could use for the hull of an airplane or a train that's lightweight and really, really strong. That's what their company is trying to do. And here's some, and they've actually found ways, they're engineers, okay, they do this kind of thing. They found ways of folding the mirror Ori out of strong metal, okay, sandwiching it between these layers, and they actually make it out of like something that's fire resistant or fireproof, so they can set it on fire and still put a weight on it. That's what the lower left-hand corner there is. They have like this really heavy weight. Notice that it's across a gap of two other metal plates, and they have it on fire, and it's still supporting weight. I don't have a movie of this, but I've seen a movie of Yves Clet rolling his Mercedes-Benz over one of these things, and it doesn't crumple. It's really ridiculous how strong these things are. And so that's like an amazing application that they're just doing this one origami model for. Yeah, but here are some other applications people have done. On the top left is the origami heart stent. This is an engineer at Oxford who came up with a way of making a cylinder that has origami creases on it that can collapse. And the idea is that this is a new design for a heart stent, like something tiny that they could thread into an artery and then have it open up and hopefully open up the artery. I'm not sure if any of them are actually being used in actual people, but they came up with this idea in 2003, and then, to actually try it in a living organism is like hard. So I'm not sure if they've actually gotten that yet or tried. There are people who are using origami for antennas. That seems weird. But the idea is that if you take like something, on one of those pictures is the mirror Ori, but another one is like this origami cylinder with all these pleats. The idea is that if that's a material that's being used as an antenna, all the different angles you have that the paper or the material is making are different angled surfaces that could catch whatever waves you're trying to capture with your antenna. So there are engineers actually working on that. This weird thing on the bottom is an origami airbag design. There are people for quite a while have been using origami to design airbags. That totally makes sense because you want an airbag to be folded up carefully so that it's, again, compactly can hide in either your steering wheel or some cars have them along the perimeter of the interior to kind of pop out at you. And then they have to unfold like that, like in less than a second or less than half a second, without catching on themselves, So people are actually using tricks that origami designers have come up with to fold things to make better airbags. And then this last one from 2017 is a weird one. It's these engineers who are using the mirror Ori as a way to create adjustable traffic sound barriers. There are these columns that if they're tightly packed together and they're lying along a highway or built along a highway, they will block sound. But if they want the columns to be collapsed tightly together during high rush hour periods. But they also don't want it to be like a wind barrier all the time, so that they'll expand or contract during different parts of the day, different times of the day. So they're using origami to make the columns expand and contract. That's one of the weirder applications of origami I've seen, but it's actually being done in Michigan, I think, because the University of Michigan are the people who came up with that. So those are just some examples, and there's lots more. So why? Why is origami being used by all these people, other than it's cool? I don't have that as one of my reasons here, that it's cool. But the things that are more convincing to people who give money for this kind of stuff is ease of manufacturing. Okay? If you can make an origami engineering design that is viable, it should be easy to manufacture because it's made out of a flat material. And flat material things are generally easier to manufacture, as opposed to some complicated 3D thing that you have to like either 3D print or fabricate some other way. So flat is good. Compact storage. If things can fold into a flat object, like a solar panel array, then that's a nice feature. But the biggest reason that we're going to see a few examples of is this thing called independence of scale. So this so here I have the mirror ore again. As I fold and unfold it, this is making a rather complicated mechanical motion. Okay, there's a lot going on here with this, just the way this is opening and closing. And that motion, or the mechanics of this, function only because of the way the origami works. That is, I could make this really, really big, and it would still have the same motion as long as I could find a way to fold something really, really big. It would look exactly the same. Or I could make it really, really, really tiny, like microscopic, and it would still have the same motion. That's what's called independence of scale. The mechanics you see aren't dependent on its size. And that's very different from, like, say, a normal robot. Like a traditional robot that you would see in Star Wars or something, has like ball and joint mechanisms or whatever. And if you try to make like double or triple the size of that, well, now those same ball and joint mechanisms might not support the weight of the joints they have anymore. You need like a newer technology for it to function at a super large scale or at a super small scale. So a lot of engineering things, like that's why you can't just like take a car and quadruple its size and it'll still run. No, it actually won't. You'll need way more gas or it'll just blow up or something. I don't know. But origami doesn't do that. So engineers have been really attracted to origami, I think, because of this last one. Okay. Yeah. And actually, in the past 20 to 30 years, we understand the math behind origami a lot more now than we did before. That's definitely a reason too. So yeah, I want to show some examples of what people have actually done. So this is from 2009. That's kind of a while ago. But this is one of the first. This is the Harvard Microbiotics Lab. They actually have a pretty strong origami group. And they were interested in using origami to basically make transformers. Like, can you make a sheet of origami that will fold into multiple things? This is a very rudimentary one, but we just saw it fold into kind of like a boat. So there are magnets here that are helping the folds stay together. Otherwise, there's circuitry along the creases that is making it fold on its own. But this is one crease pattern that can fold into either a boat or an airplane, or probably many other things too. And so they were trying to explore this idea of like having one material, one design that could make many different shapes. That's kind of cool. And I then think, yeah, the same group came up with this one. Is this actually playing, or because I can't tell? I'm going to click on it to see if it's playing. Yes, it's playing. This is the self-folding crawler. Okay, this one's weird, okay? This one, okay, this is like a thing that is starting to fold. Notice that's 8 times the speed. Everything here is folding on its own because it's being heated up. There's always this question of how do you make things fold on their own? The previous one was using electricity. This is using heat. So this is in some oven and it's heating up, and in sequence these creases are actuating and getting this robot designed to kind of like lift itself up, and then it's going to like kind of walk away. And at some point it uses the motors too, like right there. Yeah, the motors are being used to help it stand it up, and then it has to fold a little bit more. There's some inner legs that are folding, and then it's operational, and the engines kick in, and it starts walking away. Yeah. So I think that's kind of cool. This went semi-viral when it first came out. I'm going to let it play again. But I want to offer you a lesson. Whenever you see things like this on YouTube, like, oh, engineers came up with this thing. Oh, look at this cool video. You have to realize a couple of things. One, it's usually postdocs who are making these things, because that's where all the fun is. But two, you're seeing the good video, right? I was working with people at the time who knew this Harvard group, the Robert Wood's Harvard group, and they were like, because they're heating it up, most of the early versions of this video had it bursting into flames halfway through, because this was pretty hot, And so finally they got one that did not burst into flames, and that's the one they put on YouTube. So you got to realize that whenever you see these kind of things. But it's still pretty cool. So this is kind of what I mean by a lot of engineers are turning to origami as inspiration for making robotic designs. Because aside from needing these motions, this design could work at any scale. Yeah, okay, here's one that I worked with. Where I currently work is close to the University of Massachusetts, and there are some physicists there who had come up with this cool way of making something called polymer gels fold. So this is microscopic material. These are really, really tiny things, and here's how it worked. Have any of you played with grow animals before? These are like these little things. They look like either like a monkey or a robot or something, and they're tiny and they're kind of dense. But then you put them in a cup of water, and they or like this turtle here, and then they blow up to like 5 times their size because it slowly absorbs the water, and it's really, really a sponge that's been dehydrated, and yeah. So that material, this grow animals material, what these two guys, Chris Santangelo and Ryan Hayward at UMass, what they did is that they made this sandwich, they came up with a sandwich layer concept, okay? So that's what you're seeing on the left there. That orange material in the middle, that's grow animal spongy material. It expands when you get it wet. On the top and the bottom are some polystyrene that's stiff, that does not do anything when you get it wet. It just stays stiff, okay? So they make these sandwiches, stiff polystyrene layer, then grow animal thick layer, then another stiff layer. And then they carve trenches on the top and the bottom to make in accordance to the mountains and valleys of an origami crease pattern. So that when they get it wet, and I think I have the next slide for this, when they get it wet, it'll bend because where the gap is, the trench that they carved out from the polystyrene, that will swell and force the rest to bend. And they make these things really, really tiny. These are microscopically thin, okay? And so they approached me. When they came up with this idea, they approached me because they knew I did origami and some other people too. And we're like, how can we test this? How can we like try to do cool origami stuff with this? Can we really see if this is a viable way to do folding at a microscopic level? And they were very successful. So first of all, one aspect of this that's really cool is if you get one of these things wet, the one issue is how far is it going to fold? Is it going to fold all the way flat or just 90 degrees or whatever? Well, they can totally control that by controlling the size of the trench they make. How wide is it? If it's wider, it'll fold more. And so here, this is a demo. These are actually folded things. This is an electron microscopy image of just a little piece of these things folding to test which widths will give which folding angles. And they got great correlation and reliability. And they could pretty much do any angle they want. They could fold all the way flat or a little or not so flat. They had a wide range, okay? Then they wanted to say, like, can we actually do some origami? So we found, so one problem with this technology as it stands now, although I think more recently they've gotten better at this, is when they get one of these things wet, all the creases want to fold at the same time. So a lot of origami models, you do the folds in sequence, like we learned today for those of you who came to the origami lesson. You fold this, you fold that, and then you need to fold something else. So they wanted a good classic origami design where everything could fold at once. And there's something called the randlet flapping bird that actually does that. It's like the Japanese crane, but a little bit different. So on the left there is a macroscopic image of an actual origami randlet flapping bird. On the right is an electron microscopy image that is super tiny, what is that, 100 nanometers, something like that? Or is that micrometers? I can never remember. Yeah, so how small is that? Let me show you how small that is. That white thing there is a grain of rice. And right next to it, I don't know if you can see this, there's a dot right there. That's the crane. That's the flapping bird. Here, let me zoom in on it so you can see it better. Yeah, so grain of rice, flapping bird. At the time, I think this was the smallest. Actually, it wasn't like a Guinness Book of World Record recorded thing, but I think we thought this was the smallest piece of origami ever made at the time. I don't know if anyone's done better now. But that's how tiny it is, okay? All right, and then of course they had to make the Miura-ori because if you're a physicist and you're doing origami and you have a new way to fold something, you make the Miura-ori because that's what everyone does. But it worked. But then they were like, okay, how complicated can we make something? And I was like, oh no, wait, here's a movie of it. These are really hard to make because again, these are so tiny. Here is it's de-swelling. So if you dry it out, it'll unfold. So you can't see that very well because of the contrast. But now it's folding again, so then they got it wet again. And notice how it kind of clicks into place. There's like surface tension that's actually helping it kind of like go together. But then, then there's another one, there's some more. Anyway, then they wanted something more complicated. So what the hell is this? This is a really cool origami tessellation. In fact, I have one here to show you what this looks like, if I can get this out. Are you going to get out here? Yeah. This is something that's like got all of these like hexagon twist type things, and it folds into this kind of like thick layer kind of thing. It doesn't fold into something flat. This is a 3D origami tessellation, and it has lots of creases. And I was like, if we could make this to fold successfully, that would be really doing something, because this is kind of complicated. And it had a lot of creases. And it was a great, I don't know, I'm not going to do what the Harvard group did. I'm going to show you the failure first. This was the failure where the postdocs who were trying to put this together actually got the folding angles wrong, because remember, they had to program how far each crease goes. And I think that at first they just made them all the same. And these aren't all the same. You have some of these creases are folding at something like close to 72 degrees. Others are more like close to 120 or something like that. So there's a lot of variation. But here at the first, they had them all trying to fold to the same angle, and that was clearly not working. This was too gunky. So they tried again. Well, then I talked to them. It's like, you got to get the folding angles right. And they had more success. This is it. This was the crease pattern, the new improved version, folding after 15 minutes. Half of it folded. The other half didn't, and they didn't quite know why. They thought there were some defects in there. But then they let it sit for 2 hours, and it slowly figured it out. And then they dried it out. They let it dry and then folded it again, and it actually ended up learning how to work. This is it drying out. Again, this is super tiny. This is like you would barely be able to see this. Really hard to get movies like that because it's hard to keep it in focus. But after a couple of tries, it totally worked. And this was so why were they doing this? These are called polymer hydrogels. They're tiny and they're water-based. The materials this is made out of are incredibly biocompliant. You could put this in the human body and it would be fine. In fact, it might absorb it if you left it in there long enough. So one hot topic in bioengineering is something called targeted drug delivery. The idea there is you have some toxic drug that would like kill cancer cells and maybe kill the rest of you too if you let it. But if you could somehow get the toxic anti-cancer drugs right to the cancer tumor and nowhere else, then maybe you wouldn't like make people be sick with chemotherapy as you were trying to cure their cancer. So targeted drug delivery is trying to find ways to put cancer-fighting chemicals at the tumors and nowhere else. One idea is, can you make like an origami ball to capture these things that could then be injected into the human body and that only open up when it somehow it detects that it's encountered by the pH level or something, a tumor site. This is one way you could do that if you could get the folding action to kind of be controlled in a suitable way. That's one of the motivations behind this. Yeah. So the last thing I wanted to mention, I think I have time for one more quick one, is nanorobotics. Okay. So this is getting even smaller. This is not microscopic. This is nanoscopic. Could we fold something that's really, really small, like at the molecular level? And the answer is yeah, if you can fold something called graphene. Graphene is basically this, although this is a computer cartoon of it, right? But you're basically taking carbon atoms and making a lattice of them, and you can get these really strong, highly superconductive materials by just that are literally one kind of atom thick. And this has been a hot topic in molecular chemistry for like a long time. And people have finally started to figure out how to fold this stuff. And again, because folding is independent of scale, that means they can make these graphene thin structures into like a cube and stuff. And so this is actually something that was published in Science Advances in 2017 of like, oh, look, we can fold graphene, kind of. It's pretty rude or crude, but it works. More recently, this guy from the University of Pennsylvania, Mark Miskin, has come up with a way to make actual robots that are at the nanoscale, that are made out of graphene. And I wonder if I click on this, if it'll work. If I click on that, yes, it'll open it up. This is Mark Minskin's webpage. And if I can remember to click on the right thing, yeah, I click on projects, because he has fun movies, yes, and we want to see his movies. of a robot. So this is again this is bigger than nanoscopic, but it's nanoscopic thin. This is literally an origami robot swimming around at the cellular level. And I don't know if you can see, the way he's controlling it, this actually has a little bit of microcircuitry on it. You see the little white dots? He's somehow flashing a white dot on the top and then the bottom alternately, and that's causing the legs to swim. So he's live controlling this, you know. This is crazy. I don't know if you're appreciating this. I want to show more. Wait, no, I need to go back. So let's go back. And can I see, is it this one? Yes. Deploying, okay. So how does he make these things? He makes these robots using the same technology that we make microchips with, okay? This is him making, I think, 10,000 of these robots at the same time. They're all, like, this is basically a microchip that has these robots' circuitries programmed into. He bathes it in some material that then dissolves everything around them, and what's left are the robots. So these are like, well, this is a small piece of this grid. And from what he's published and the conversations I've had with him, he claims that he gets about 90% efficiency out of this. Like 90% of these will actually work when he makes them out of this. Think about this for a second. He's making nanoscopic robots that he can make 10,000 of them at a time. That is an incredibly, and he can make them using existing technology that's easy to use. This like silicone chip technology. That type of feedback where you can like design something and make it and like fix it, redesign it, make it again, that's an incredibly short feedback loop compared to most robotic designs. Like if you look at any of the Boston Dynamic videos of like robots dancing around and stuff, that takes them like a year to make one of those designs and then even longer to program it to like look cool and dance. He's able to make these things way cheaper, way faster. And this is scary. This is actually a little scary. And I never thought I'd be working in an area where maybe what I'm doing with origami math could be used for evil, but this is close. This is like the Borg, maybe. This is like nanobots that could be injected into your body, and now all of a sudden you don't like pizza anymore. I mean, they're not there yet. Notice all they can do is swim. And he has to like shine bits of light on them. But we're kind of getting close to the place where there could be things like nanobots that could be used for good. They could be used to fight cancer cells, or they could be used to rewire your brain. I don't know. It's a little scary. This is getting a little scary. I mean, yeah. So this is something I think about sometimes. Like, oh my gosh, people might actually use origami to do evil. So I want to go back to and finish my slides, which are here. And it went back to that. So anyway, yeah, that is it. I want to say thank you. So the morals here is that there's a lot of different ways to do math with origami. You'll see some more tomorrow. Applications occur in many unexpected places. I've written actually 2 origami books about the math behind it. You feel free to check them out. Oh, and my work is supported by the NSF. I have to say that too, because the NSF likes origami. I never thought I'd be paid by the government to work on origami, but it's happening. And I hope it's not just because maybe it's evil, but I struggle with this. Anyway, thank you, and we should have time for questions and stuff, but thank you. So I think I've been told that if people have questions and you want the people on Zoom to be able to hear them, which would be nice. There's some microphones up here, and you can come up to a microphone and say hi and ask your questions. So don't be shy. Any questions? Yeah, get up there. It should be on, I think.
I had a question about your proof at the beginning.
Yeah.
I was just curious why it was plus and minus 180. It seemed like they were rotating more than that. Or less?
Yeah, so let's look at that again. One thing that my diagram here does not make super clear is you're looking at this, remember we first cut off the polygon, and you're looking at it from above, okay? So these monorails are they're actually kind of like spinning. Or wait, no. I want to think of it as yeah. It's like spinning, and it's heading in this direction. Like imagine just actually rolling on right like this on the top of it, and it's going in this direction, and then it turns, and that's a 180-degree turn, because it was pointing in this direction, and now it's pointing in that direction. So yeah, it's not a full 360. It's just a 180. You gotta visualize it right.
I see it. I get it now.
Cool. Any other questions? Questions? Yes, be brave.
I just wanted, do you have like a favorite origami pattern that you've done?
Oh gosh. I have many, many favorites. Actually, that devil that I showed you, that Jung Mai Kao's demon, that is one of my favorites. I used to have that memorized. I liked it so much, but it's been a while. There's something called, I'll actually mention this tomorrow. There's something called a square twist. And actually, no, there's a picture here. Yeah, this origami tessellation is actually a 4x4 grid of these things called square twists. And this is one of my favorites. Square twists are just really neat. If you Google square twist origami, you'll probably see a crease pattern. I highly encourage you to try to fold it because it's so fun. I think it's one of my favorites because it makes paper do something you wouldn't think paper could do. Actually twist. You can take each one of those little squares, each one of those diamond squares, literally rotates 90 degrees when you fold it into this flat thing. And the fact that you can have some of the paper rotating and other parts of the paper not rotating, why should paper allow that? But it does. It's weird. So that's one of my favorites. I don't know, there's so many other things. People who do origami is incredibly rich as an art form. It's hard to really have a favorite, but those are some of my favorites.
When you were presenting some of this stuff, it was making me think of those stadiums that have the dome roofs. Is that a place where origami is used?
Yes. Okay. So I know architects who, in fact, one of my collaborators, this guy in Japan named Tomohiro Tachi, that I'll probably mention tomorrow as well. He's an engineer. He's at the University of Tokyo, but his background is also in architecture. And there's another guy in Austria named Rupert Malik, who's also a professor but an architect. There are a lot of architects who are interested in using origami as a way to either make deployable structures, like tents that you can just make, or like dome structures that can open and collapse. I don't know if any of you have heard of Chuck Hoberman. I think he's at Harvard now, but he's also an architect and designer. He invented something called a Hoberman sphere, which was really popular in the 90s. It's like this plastic thing that's looks like a dome, but you pull it apart, almost like the mirror ori here, and it expands from a small sphere into a much bigger sphere, using this kind of like mechanism. But it's a mechanism that is heavily origami inspired. So Chuck Hoberman is a famous architect who has made designs that I don't know if they're stadium dome size, but they're similar, that are inspired by looking at origami and then coming up with a metal mechanism that duplicates what origami can do, but is stronger because it's made out of metal. So definitely there's carryover there, yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Was there a moment that you knew that origami was going to be your main field of work?
Oh gosh. Yeah, I think maybe when I was in grad school. When I was in college, I actually had some professors who were like, yeah, that origami is cool, but I kind of laugh at them now. But when I was in grad school, I made this was in the early to mid 90s when no one was doing that much origami math, and I had to make a decision like, okay, I can't do my PhD in origami because no one would be my PhD advisor if I was trying to do my PhD in origami. Because usually your advisor wants to know more about the subject than you do, and I couldn't find anyone who was willing to do that. So I did my PhD in graph theory, which was great. I loved it. It was fun. And I kind of thought that was probably good too, because it gave me a very traditional background for my PhD work. But I knew that as soon as I graduated, if I could get a professor job, then I just wanted to do origami. And I kind of made that decision in grad school at some point. I was like, that's what I'm really, really excited about. So in between all the anxiety of actually, am I going to finish my PhD? Oh my gosh, maybe I should procrastinate by folding origami. At some point in there, I was like, yeah, if I get the chance, if I ever become a professor, I want to just do origami. And I've been lucky that that's played out rather well. So far, anyway. Any other questions?
So, seeing that origami has a peak and a trough, can you think of it as making a type of computer with a 1 and 0 programming? And within that, can you make it at an atomic level with graphite folds?
Yeah, so no one's done that, but the graphite part yet. But but yes, your intuition is exactly right. So somewhere in the 90s, some people started writing papers about asking computational questions with origami. And that created a field that's now known as computational origami. And one of the leaders, probably the leader of that field, is this guy named Eric Demain, who's at MIT. Really cool guy. If you're interested in how origami and theoretical computer science intersect together, Google Eric Demain, Eric with a K, Demaine, Demain. He's done a lot of stuff, and yes, you can actually prove that you can, if you know what these words mean, you can make a Turing machine out of origami. You can make logic gates out of origami. You can make origami designs that simulate logic gates. But but the little bit of graphene folding that I showed you is very, very crude. It's like, here I can make a crease. It's not anything like this yet. So they haven't been able to make really complicated graphene nano-level origami yet. And I think even if they could, I think if you were to try to make a computer out of origami like that, it'd be really slow. I don't think it would be quite as fast as using normal silicon chips. So I don't think origami is going to give us a revolution in microcomputer technology. But in theory, you could do it. You could make a piece of paper. If you had a big enough piece of paper, you could simulate a microchip with origami. No one would ever want to do that, but you could. It's strange. Anything else? Okay, well, thanks.